The world remembers Pete Sampras as a man who never let you see him sweat. 14 Grand Slam titles, 7 Wimbledon crowns, 286 weeks at world number 1. A serve so precise it looked less like sport and more like mathematics. For a decade, he was the most unreadable man in tennis, a champion who won with a blank expression while the rest of the world screamed, cried, and celebrated around him. But the silence the world admired was never emptiness. It was control, and control has a cost that no trophy can pay off. Behind that composed face was a body carrying a blood condition he almost never spoke about. A young man who broke down in tears on center court while his coach lay dying. And now, at 54, a husband quietly standing beside his wife through one of the hardest fights of her life, a fight his perfect serve could never win for her. So what happens to a man who spent 30 years mastering silence, when life finally asks him to speak? If Pete Sampras' story still means something to you, leave a like for Pete before we begin. Pete Sampras was born on August 12, 1971, in Washington, D.C., the third of 4 children in a Greek-American family. When Pete was 7, the Samprases relocated to Palos Verdes, California, chasing warmer weather and, unknowingly, the conditions that would shape a tennis legend. Long before Wimbledon, there was a boy hitting a ball against the basement wall of his family home. Thud, 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 with no idea that rhythm would one day define a career. His parents, Sammy and Georgia, were not wealthy, and every lesson, every racket, every extra hour on a court represented a quiet family sacrifice. One detail would follow Pete for the rest of his career. As a child, he watched grainy 16mm films of Rod Laver, projected onto the dining room wall by his early coach and mentor, Dr. Peter Fisher. Long before Pete ever set foot on grass, Wimbledon existed for him only as flickering light on a wall, a distant promise most people would have called impossible. That contrast, a modest Californian household and a dream borrowed from old film reels, would quietly define him. The boy who once threw his racket in junior tournaments out of raw frustration would, within a few years, become known as the calmest man in the sport. But that calm wasn't born in him. It was built, piece by piece, out of a child who had once let the whole world see exactly how much losing hurt. Around age 14, on Fisher's advice, Pete made a decision that could have ended his career before it began. He abandoned his reliable two-handed backhand for an attacking, one-handed stroke built for grass and forward movement. For nearly 2 years, his results suffered. Peers his age were winning junior titles, while Pete lost matches he once would have won easily. It was a bet on a future no one could guarantee. That bet paid off in September 1990 at the U.S. Open. At just 19 years old, Pete defeated Ivan Lendl in a 5-set quarterfinal, ending Lendl's run of 8 consecutive U.S. Open finals. 2 days later, he beat John McEnroe in 4 sets. In the final, he faced fellow young American Andre Agassi and won in straight sets, 6-4, 6-3, 6-2, becoming the youngest men's singles champion in U.S. Open history at the time. Asked about the achievement afterward, Pete gave the kind of quiet, understated answer that would define his public persona for the next decade, crediting his serve, his preparation, and refusing to overstate the moment. From there, the rise became historic. Between 1993 and 1998, Pete finished 6 consecutive seasons as the year-end world number 1, a record that stood for years. He won Wimbledon 7 times between 1993 and 2000, turning center court's grass into something close to personal territory. Across his career, he spent 286 weeks at number 1, built almost entirely on one of the most dominant serves the sport has ever seen. Behind the trophies, though, the toll was building. At the 1996 U.S. Open, during a brutal 5-set quarterfinal against Alex Corretja, Pete became visibly ill on court, vomiting between points, yet somehow saved a match point and won the deciding tiebreak. For a man famous for showing nothing, it was one of the first cracks the public ever saw. Proof that the calm exterior was covering something far more exhausting underneath. The full crack came in Melbourne at the 1995 Australian Open. Pete's longtime coach and close friend, Tim Gullickson, had fallen seriously ill and was forced to leave the tournament for medical tests that would eventually reveal brain cancer. Courier reportedly asked if he was all right and offered to continue the next day. Pete chose to keep playing, tears and all, eventually winning the match in 5 sets. It remains one of the most human moments of his career. The instant the unreadable champion showed the entire tennis world that his calm had never meant he felt less. It only meant he had learned, painfully, how to carry it alone. Gullickson passed away from brain cancer the following year. Away from the court, Pete's personal life took a turn few expected from a man so intensely private. In late 1999, while recovering from injury, he watched a film featuring actress Bridget Wilson and asked a mutual friend to arrange an introduction. By his own admission, their first meeting was awkward and quiet, hardly the stuff of a Hollywood script. But by the end of that first dinner, he knew he wanted her in his life. Bridget, a former Miss Teen USA with an established acting career, understood a version of public life Pete recognized. They married in September 2000, keeping their relationship remarkably shielded from the celebrity spotlight that surrounded them both. Their sons, Christian and Ryan, were born in 2002 and 2005. One quiet detail stands in sharp contrast to the trophies filling his home. After retiring, Pete's daily rhythm shifted to school drop-offs, family dinners, and sitting on the sidelines of his son's youth sports games. The same unremarkable routines that never make a highlight reel, but that he has since described as some of the most fulfilling of his life. The serve that once earned him millions of dollars and a permanent place in tennis history couldn't be used to make his sons finish their homework faster. For the first time, greatness required nothing from him but presence. For most of his career, Pete rarely discussed a private health detail. He carries beta thalassemia minor, a genetic blood trait that can cause mild anemia and fatigue. A striking detail for a man who built a career on stamina, 5-set matches, and relentless serving in the summer heat. True to form, he let his results speak instead of turning it into a storyline. But the deepest crisis of his life had nothing to do with his own body. In December 2022, his wife Bridget was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. In October 2023, breaking decades of intense personal privacy, Pete released a rare public statement revealing that Bridget had undergone major surgery, chemotherapy, and ongoing targeted maintenance therapy, and asked the public for support and good thoughts as she continued treatment. For a man whose identity had been built entirely around controlling the pace of a match, placing a serve exactly where he wanted from 78 feet away, this was something no discipline or preparation could fix. There was no stroke to rebuild, no rival to outserve. There was only the long, uncertain wait that comes with loving someone through illness, and the unfamiliar experience of asking the world, plainly, and without a scoreboard to hide behind, for compassion. Today, at 54, Pete Sampras lives a life almost deliberately distanced from the spotlight that once followed his every serve. Estimates place his net worth in the neighborhood of $150 million, built across one of the most lucrative eras in tennis history. He and Bridget have lived across several homes in California, from Brentwood to Lake Sherwood, choosing privacy over the broadcaster's chair or exhibition circuit that many of his peers pursued after retirement. Christian and Ryan are now grown, largely kept out of public view by design. Since Bridget's diagnosis became public, friends and observers describe a man whose priorities have visibly narrowed to what matters most: his wife's health, his sons, and ordinary, uneventful days. The 14 Grand Slam trophies remain in his home, but by his own account, they no longer define what a good day looks like. A good day now means health. It means privacy. It means simply being present. The man once nicknamed Pistol Pete for a serve that seemed to have no weakness has spent the back half of his life learning that some opponents, illness, time, fear for someone you love, cannot be aced. They have to be endured, together, one day at a time. The world once believed Pete Sampras' greatest gift was his silence, the ability to feel nothing while everyone around him felt everything. But that silence was never emptiness. It was a wall built by a boy who learned early that showing pain didn't win matches, and refined over decades into the calm of a champion who never let anyone see the weight he carried. True legacy, it turns out, is not the number of trophies gathering dust on a shelf. It is what a person becomes once no one is watching the scoreboard anymore. A husband standing beside his wife, A father on the sidelines instead of center court. A man who finally let the world hear him ask for help. Somewhere, that same boy is still hitting a ball against a basement wall. Thud, thud, thud. No longer chasing a trophy, but simply grateful for one more ordinary day. If Pete Sampras' serve, his silence, or the quiet strength he's shown through his family's hardest years ever meant something to you, tell us in the comments which memory of him stays with you most. Share this video with someone who remembers watching him play. And to Pete, Bridget, and their family, thank you for showing us that the strongest kind of greatness is often the quietest.